Let's talk about some of the fundamentals of hiding lavalier microphones on people's shirts. Now, this is the most common place that you'll hide lavalier microphones, or I find that I hide lavalier microphones. That doesn't mean it's the best place necessarily, but it is generally the most practical way to do things. So I'm usually hiding them under button plackets, and sometimes I'm using some other things as well, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. First of all, thanks to Rycote for sending some of these out to me. I actually have purchased some of these in the past. They've come out with a new advanced line of overcovers, stickies, and undercovers as well. We're going to look at the overcovers and the round and the squared stickies. All right, so I had a couple of jobs over the last couple of weeks, and let me just tell you about my experiences and how I hid lavalier microphones. And I actually ended up using two different microphones. This is the Technologies VT500. And then on one of the pieces, I also used a Sanken COS 11D. This one's very common amongst sound mixers. You can see they're oriented a little differently. On the Voice Technologies, there is a front-facing capsule, and then on the Sanken, it's the top-facing capsule. So one thing that's interesting is both of these come with a little mount here, something like this. That's for the Sanken. This one is specially made for the Voice Technologies. In the case of the Voice Technologies, this little rubber kind of sleeve here has a hole, an opening for the capsule. And then in the case of the Sanken, the capsule, you can just orient it so it comes out the top like that. First of all, let me just kind of cover how I hid these. On the first piece I did 2 weeks ago, week before last, I actually mic'd mainly with the VT500. It was an older woman who was the talent. And once that piece posts online, I'll go ahead and put a link to it. But she had a kind of an Asian-looking button-down shirt. So it had those really kind of cool fabric buttons, but this is good enough to show what we did here from a practical point of view. So the overall strategy was, what I wanted to do is hide this underneath the placket and then run the cable down out through the bottom of the shirt. And since it was all going to be kind of waist and up shots, we could hide the transmitter in the pocket of the talent in their pants. So that was going to work just fine. Practical matters, a few things we had to do. First of all, being male and working with female talent, there can be some awkwardness because you do have to kind of get underneath their clothing. So a couple of things that I did. First of all, I used this as just a Rode VXLR adapter. So it's a 3.5 millimeter to XLR adapter. And it's got a bit of heft to it. It's made out of metal. So what I did is I actually plugged in the microphone to this, and then we used this to run it down her shirt. So we just ran it in this way. And the weight of that adapter actually pulled the cable down pretty nicely. So what that meant in practical terms is we didn't need to have her take her shirt off, which was good. So we'll just run it to right there for now. Now, the nice thing about this setup here is that it's fairly straightforward. So what I did is I got a couple of the squared stickies. Now, the new advanced line of stickies is nice because what they've done is the adhesive they're using has a couple of different features. Number one, it doesn't leave residue on the clothing. And number two, it's hypoallergenic, so it's fine to use on skin. You can use it on clothing as well, of course. And it holds really, really well. So I'm actually pretty pleased with what Rycote's done here. I've used their previous generation stickies as well. So these are even better than they had before. And the nice thing is that these fit almost perfectly. So they're two-sided in terms of their adhesive. So we put one on the back like that. And then I'm going to put one on the front. Now on the front, because this is a front-facing microphone, what I did is I kind of put it down a little lower like that. And what that does is it also kind of grabs the cable a little bit there. Then what we did is kind of slide this in. And just hit it between the button placket there. And then as the shirt generally flows, it's not super obvious. So that's what I generally use these squared stickies for. That works pretty nicely. Now, just a little bit more in terms of strategy. The reason I put tape on both sides is so I sort of sandwich it between these. I'd never want the fabric rubbing across the capsule of the microphone. That's going to pick up a lot of noise. Now, you're still going to get some rustle because clothing makes noise. That's just natural when the talent moves, if they move enough, you're still going to pick up some, but what you're not going to get is the sound of this fabric over the top of the microphone rubbing back and forth and making noise itself. So that actually worked quite nicely for us. So once we've gotten to that point, what I need to do as well is I need to, here's the other end of the cable. I also needed to have a loop in the cable so that if the cable did get tugged during the recording for whatever reason, that it wouldn't necessarily transfer that sound to the microphone itself. So this is a little harder to see here, but again, just a simple loop like that. And then what I do is this is Transpore Tape, which is medical tape, and this is safe to use on people's skin as well, but it also works nicely on clothing. And usually what I'll do is it also tears nicely, just with fingers, so you don't need tape, or you don't need scissors. So I just kind of went like that. I want that to be fairly loose. I want it to be able to give some, and that'll give a little bit. And then I just tape that to the underside of the shirt, somewhere like this. So we did need to get up into her shirt a little bit, but she was a professional actress, so she was used to this whole procedure. And this is where you do have to be a little careful because the tape can make itself known if you're not careful. So there we go. That is how we hid the lavalier microphone on our first talent for our shoot a couple of weeks ago. Again, really good luck with the Rycote Stickies. They work really nicely. They're very easy to work with. You're not futzing around, kind of cutting things up. They're ready to go. The perfect size for working with most lavalier microphones. Now, let's talk about the shoot I did this last week. It was a autumn day, early in the autumn, and it was pretty windy, and all the shoot was outdoors. I had two talents, so I had to mic two people up. Both of them were wearing coats over shirts because, again, it was a kind of a cool day. So one thing I tried, I could have gone with this approach, but the problem is I didn't want to bury it under their coat and their shirt. And the jackets, they both had kind of these synthetic material jackets. One was one talent was wearing sort of a down-filled vest, sort of a sports vest. So those tend to make a lot of noise. So we didn't want to necessarily attach it to that. Although you could, if the idea is again to isolate it so that it doesn't rub back and forth. And then the other talent was wearing sort of a black shirt, and then she had a jacket that was unzipped, but it was over that. And so we had a few different options. So I actually ended up using these overcovers, and it turned out that black worked for both of them. There are other colors as well. There's a tan and a white. We actually used the black in both cases because that fit the wardrobe best. And these are kind of cool here. What these allow you to do, what's nice about this is that if there is a lot of wind, these will help to prevent the wind from blowing across the capsule and distorting the sound signal. So that's what's really cool about these. And then they have the round stickies that go with them. So for the first talent that was wearing the vest, what I did was she had her vest open down to maybe about halfway, and the vest was a dark color. So what I was able to do, but I just put the sticky on there like that, sticky again on both sides. And then I put the Sanken COS 11D lavalier microphone like that. So you can see that's adhered now. And then we just took the cover, and the cover goes down over it like that. So that provides wind protection, but it also hid it quite nicely because, again, the vest was just about here. So it didn't stand out too much against the rest of her wardrobe, but it was, just exposed enough that we were going to get some good sound, and it wasn't distracting. So that was going to work okay for the particular production we were working on. The second woman was wearing a black shirt, and so I did a similar type things. Her jacket was open, so putting it just kind of right here, and it stood out. It didn't stand out against the black shirt, so it was a nice way to hide that as well. So I guess the theme to hiding lavalier microphones is, first of all, you don't want a lot of stuff rubbing against it. You don't want wind blowing against the capsule. And you also want to make it so that fabric can't rub against the capsule of the microphone like this here. Again, a nice thing that I really like about the Rycote Stickies is that they don't leave residue. And in fact, if we unbutton this here, you can see Here's some residue from a competitor's product. Specifically, I like, and don't take this wrong, I like Rode products, but the Rode Invisalign, the adhesive that came with, which was a similar type thing for hiding lavalier microphones, it's this kind of a holder for their particular microphones, but it comes with some adhesive. That adhesive is not nearly as, it doesn't work as well. It sticks very nicely, but it leaves residue, and the Rycote has never left any residue for me, so that's a real plus. People don't appreciate it when you leave residue on their wardrobes or their clothing. So that's why I think the additional cost of the Rycote Stickies is definitely worth it. So hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below, and we'll talk to you again soon.